A few years ago, we were two teachers who loved the work and what we were doing, but could barely pay the bills. We did everything right and still felt stuck. Here today, we're going to talk about why that experience turned into this channel. We are Caleb and Mary Beth Lutz, and we have quite a journey that led us here to why we talk about things like, finances and communication skills and possible streams of income that you want to develop. But we started somewhere. So today we're going to dive into, where we were when we started, a lot of the turning point that happened for us as well. And then really what we realized and why we built the channel at the end of the day. So Caleb, I'd love to hear a little bit about you and where you started.
Let's do it. So today's story day, and one of my favorite things, when I really get down to someone I admire and look up to and just want to learn about, I've figured out everybody's got a story. So here's a little bit of ours. For me, leading up to that, getting into teaching and that turning point, I'm going to go back a long ways. So I grew up on a farm in South Georgia. Big family. I have 4 brothers and 4 sisters, so 9 of us total. Parents still together. Amazing family and very rich in just high character, very rich in their faith. Doing this to impact the world, like all of my siblings are some of my heroes, and very purpose-driven, very intentional with what they do. And so grew up very strong in a lot of those ways. The area that definitely there was a deficit was finances. So when I was just 4, we lost the bigger family farm. We kind of struggled along. My dad did a couple of startups while he was still working on farms. None of that worked out. At 10 years old, we lost the house and our personal land as well, and had to move off to outskirts of Atlanta and just kind of start from scratch, leverage a home. And I think this is all me looking back at it. For me at the time, again, I was a kid and I just saw the big family breakfast, but us like praying and begging God and like, where's the next money coming from? And when we would talk about money, it was almost always in a fight. It was, don't you know we have this coming up? How did this money disappear? Where did this go? And so it was just stress. It was, to me, money was annoying. It's what got in the way of everything that we wanted to do. And like all the fun that I wanted to have. And still, it was like there were so many limits because of that. I don't think I thought about it too much at the time. I think I just avoided it from a young age. We were homeschooled all the way through. So me, K through 12. But when I was in 5th grade, we switched over to this video program where I got to live watch a teacher leading students, both teaching, playing games. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And to me, like getting to continue learning the rest of my life, to continue like coming up with all these ways to teach kids and have fun with it, I thought was amazing. And so from 5th grade on, I was determined to become a teacher. Ended up a lot of my family members went that route. But I followed that all the way through high school, through college, got into the school systems, and like truly loved so much of the day-to-day, loved so much of that process. Had no plans of doing anything else the rest of my life. For me, there was definitely a turning point when I got in the school system and I saw what I was actually teaching versus what my students needed, and realizing this was turning into a cycle and so much of what I grew up with. And so I'll dive more into that here soon, but that's a little background on me. My wife, Mary Beth, had such a different background from me, which has allowed us to come at this from very different angles. So would you share some of your story?
I will happily share some of my story. And yeah, we definitely did have quite a bit of a different background. So I come from the suburbs of Chicago. So shout out to the Chicago people out there. The pizza's the best. Don't care what anybody says, but
Giordano's, not lose.
Really? Oh man, see, we go back and forth. That's okay. But so from the western suburbs of Chicago, and truly actually one of the wealthiest counties in the nation, actually, that I was a part of. I had a tremendous education, and I know my parents invested pretty heavily on the tax side of things to make sure that I had a great education. And so my dad was very successful in corporate America. He was working with a mortgage company for many, many years. And we lived pretty comfortably. I mean, when I first heard your story about you guys like sometimes praying for food to show up because you didn't have any in the pantry, I was like, I never grew up that way. We always had more than enough. We were always going out to eat. We were taking the family vacations, and everyone's normal is their normal. There's nothing bad. We didn't do anything wrong, but my normal was a lot different than, your normal was at the end of the day.
Sure.
But what really hit me and kind of impacted me was I realized I never thought about money until I hit my college years, because that was during 07 and 08. And my dad worked for the mortgage industry, did extremely well, as I mentioned. And one day he came home. I was a freshman in college, and he had a white box with all of his stuff in it. It was like 10 a.m. And I remember my mom was like, what are you doing here? Like, everything okay? And my dad was like, they shut the branch down because of the economic crisis, that they just had to start doing layoffs. And that was kind of the first time where when I heard about it, I'd never heard of, to that point, anybody getting laid off. So I was like, okay, that's kind of different. Then I did see the after effects, though. Our pantry started not being as full as it used to be. We started to not, go out to eat as much, if at all. We didn't do as lavish of vacations, if sometimes not doing as many by far. And I just remember there was definitely like a cutback period. And I watched my dad, and I respect him so much for who he is and what he did. Every single day, he had his laptop by him, and he was applying diligently for jobs, like diligently, and working as hard as he could to provide in the midst of that for our family. And he didn't end up finding a job that was on the market. So he actually went out and started his own business, and he started his own mortgage company. And my parents did end up retiring very well. And I watched them in the midst of us having his business. Like, I did notice there was still not as comfortable as it was when I was in my early years. But still, I watched him make the best for our family with what he could. Yeah. And again, tremendously respect him for that. But I did realize around that time, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to start thinking about money, because it does truly affect things. So that was kind of where I started. And I guess that is getting a little bit into some turning point moments for me, but that's a little bit more of my background. But I know for both of us, we were both teachers, and we just started thinking, gosh, like, we've done everything they told us to do. We've grown up differently, but something just didn't seem right. So maybe sharing more your turning point and like what was kind of shifting for you could be really good.
Yeah. So for me, and even at this point, we had never met each other. Yeah. We lived 10 minutes away from each other for 5+ years.
Yeah.
And it's so funny, like multiple times our paths should have crossed, that we talked about even right before filming this.
Yeah.
But still hadn't here. The big turning point for me came, again, once I started recognizing patterns. There was an amazing book that was part of my teaching curriculum. It's called A Framework for Understanding Poverty, and by Ruby Payne, I believe. Yeah. There's a quiz in there, and her backstory is awesome, but basically she grew up middle class, I believe, began working with the wealthy, and then later with the very poor and impoverished, and started noticing the differences in learning styles, in the hidden rules is what she calls them. And when I looked at her hidden rules quiz, which I hope we can provide a resource for at some point on
that'd be really cool.
Our channel, but when I started looking through those, I thought I had grown up middle class. Like, I got to go so many great privileges along the way that my parents made sure we all played an instrument, we all did this and that. But as I looked through, like, what is normal, what the hidden rules are, it was almost every point lined up for me with growing up in poverty. Very eye-opening to me. And when I started reading through how someone can make that shift, I just realized how much of that was not present both in my life early on, but then especially in where I was teaching. I saw curriculum that, in math, I'm teaching calculus, I'm teaching algebra, maybe geometry or something, and kids asking over and over, like, why are we learning this? Why do I have to know this? And I had gotten good at saying, well, problem solving is really important. But then when I would actually look at my real life, my finances were in the trash can. I didn't know how to help them in those areas. And I realized no matter what my students were doing, they had to get good at making money. They had to get good at working with people and owning their personal choices along the way. And the more that you play the victim, the more you think you don't have control over it, the more you're just going to repeat the cycle. And I started sitting down with anyone who would take time with me, whether they be a school leader, a business leader. I started in direct sales at that point, which I had not wanted to at all because of what I had seen up to that point, and just had this mindset towards sales. That is, that's where people turn into manipulators and they just push things. But the conversation that was had with me was, Caleb, if you want to lead anything, run any organization, start a supplemental education that helps kids with these gaps, which from very young, I was like, there is a gap we need to be filling here. And so cool, we get to be doing this now. Mm-hmm. But anyone was like, if you want that, you need to get good at sales. You need to learn to present yourself. You need to learn how to be told no. You need to understand how the inner workings of business are. And I heard that from enough different people in different walks of life that over a summer, I decided to bite the bullet. Started into my first sales job, which was very much a boiler room sales. But the short of the long story is, got to sit by reps who had figured it out. I did believe in myself in terms of being able to learn quickly to apply. Became a top 3 rep in that company of 90 plus people, 9 months in. The same month at 22 years old, started into the corporate training side, got an offer to be a trainer there. And especially for me, being a homeschooled, more introverted, terrible mindset towards sales, to being able to learn the skills and realize how much those skills can shift where you are in life. Then it was just like, oh my gosh, I get to pay this forward. I get to help other people figure this out. And if anything I've learned along the way, it is always a decision for the individual. Someone has to want it to go down that path. But truly, that from pretty early on in my career, I knew that that's what I loved. In terms of professional career, continued on in the consulting before starting our own agency, and that's a little down the road. But that was a big turning point and a big part of the why for me. And once again, it was a bit different for you, even though you made a very similar shift. So What was that for you?
Yeah, so it's interesting that, you always had the focus of helping other people. And I'll be transparent, I wish that was always my focus. I mean, I wanted to be a teacher. But for me, I was getting hit pretty heavily on the personal side. And I know you were too. I know we were both, as we were teaching, I actually was technically below the poverty line. I know that for a fact. Because I was at a private school. I was making about 15 grand per year. And that's before tax. So you can do the math on that. So, and yes, this was a bit ago, but even so, that was very little money. I knew where every penny was going. That was ironically the time where I had to get good at budgeting. It wasn't even like a, oh, let me have this option. It was like, no, I had to get good at budgeting. And I call this the windshield moment. And I would say this is probably my biggest turning point in my entire life, actually, more than anything. Mm-hmm. I was at a gas station and it was the winter. And I noticed that I kind of popped up my windshield wipers to clean off my windshield. And I noticed one of the windshield wipers had a little bit of something on it. And so I was just trying to fix it and it wouldn't come off. So I ended up popping off the windshield wiper itself. And then I went to go try and clean it.
The rubber part.
The rubber part, yeah. Sure. Somehow the metal arm that holds that whole rubber mechanism, it snapped back down and hit my windshield directly. And so the whole windshield totally shattered, completely cracked. And I'm at the gas pump and I have a breakdown. Like I'm sobbing at the gas pump because I realize I have no money to fix my windshield. There are no extras, no anything. And I was stressed out and I was trying to help these kids and impact these kids. But my personal finances were in complete trash in so many ways, And I remember calling my mom, and my mom has been crazy supportive of me for my entire life. And she still is to this day, which is great. But I called her, and I was really expecting her to be like, you know what, sweetie, it's okay. I'll send you some money. It's all going to be all right. You're going to be just fine. And I'm really glad that she didn't do that. She ended up doing what she still says was one of the hardest things she ever did in her life. Mm-hmm. But she actually told me, she said, you know what, Mary Beth, you got yourself into this situation. I fully believe in you that you can get yourself out of it. Go get him. And I was like, oh, at the time it was really, really hard because it was the first time that not only had she truly challenged me for the choices that I had made. And not a bad thing. She respected what I was doing, how I wanted to be a teacher, but she knew financially where I was. And that was kind of the turning point for me personally, that I actually could make a difference if I developed myself and I grew myself. And so that did start down a bit of a career trajectory. So I ended up getting a job. I applied like crazy. I got a job at a call center. So I was a customer service agent. And for the first few months, definitely was learning the role, was not on the leaderboard by any means, but I figured a few things out along the way, and I ended up becoming a top rep. And I remember I was there, my thought process started being like, gosh, if I could go back to the beginning and tell myself what it would take to be successful in this role, what would I tell myself? And I created this like giant PowerPoint. I mean, I was just thinking through like, okay, well, it's like little, because there were logistical things to do to be successful. And it ended up being like a 45-slide PowerPoint. And I just presented it to the training department. And I was like, hey, I don't know if you guys could ever use this, like truly with the perspective of just, hey, you guys, use the resource. And maybe that's the former teacher in me, but wanted to do it. And they started using it with the new hires who were coming out of their training class and started seeing massive retention. And it's very expensive to hire as a company. So when you get retention, they're like, whoa, you are saving us a ton of money right now. And they were like, why don't you get off the phones and start being, what we will call the transition trainer. So I ended up creating my own position very unintentionally, but I was with the new hires for the first 30 days on the floor. And I was, listening to calls. I was giving feedback. I was working with the manager for the team, just being like, how can I support? How can I help? And that experience really shaped me to start realizing, wow, the right people, because it wasn't everybody. I wish I could say nobody quit. I wish I could say that everyone was, totally happy to be there and, everyone did extremely well. That's not the case. But there were a massive amount of people who took what I had created and ran with it. And it really showed me like, okay, there are practical skills and tools that people need to be successful in their roles that they are doing. And from that point, I did training for a few years. I was truly enjoying it. I was having a really good time. Got a call from a friend, very random day, and he had been very successful at a company, which I found out today as we were sharing before we started filming. We actually applied at the exact same place and totally could have worked together.
Except I chose a different company.
Which is hilarious. But
it's a good thing.
It totally is. And but I was thrown into, very similar to Caleb, a very much boiler room sales experience and thrown into the fire for sure.
Yeah.
Manual dialing, 150 plus dials a day, like manual, hours and hours of, talking to people, getting hung up on, rejected. And the first few months for me, transparently, were extremely difficult. And I was listening to calls. I was developing myself. I was taking coaching, but I ended up almost not making it, closing a deal on the final day that I had to close kind of my last sale during the training period. And then the next week, I ended up going out and closing the largest deal on the whole team. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, like, Mary Beth, how did you do that? How did you create that sale? Like, what happened? Like, break that down for me. And I kind of did. But then I realized the people who were coming up to me, they were the ones doing like, 30 dials a day. They had previous sales experience. So they were kind of just like relying on their old experience. They weren't working as hard. Coasting. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I was like, there's actually hard work and work ethic. So I kind of called that my work ethic season, where I was like, I learned that to be successful in anything, you have to work really, really hard. But even during the time I was making really good money, I still started thinking that there has to be more than just making enough money. And that's ironic because I think a lot of people think, oh my gosh, when I just get to a certain income amount, I thought it was 6 figures. Then I made 6 figures. And then I was like, this is nice, but is there more? And so that was another turning point for me of just wondering like, gosh, like, are there more things that I could do with my life? Are there more, resources I could find? Or what about if I don't just want to work a 9 to 5 forever? That was my personal story. And we kind of got to that same point too. I don't know if you want to share anything on that, but just realizing we wanted more than not only being financially free and flexible, but also freedom in almost every area of our life too. So
yeah. I think for this background story, this is a lot of what we wanted to share. I will just say over the course of being in sales, direct sales, where it's even more on you. And it's even more pure entrepreneurship. And then along the way, while Mary Beth was still working a high-end sales job, I was able to transition and form my own freight agency and how to start over. And there's more to that story. But we've been able to be just traditional business owners and then very much having more of the flexible income, some of it more passive, where we're able to choose, does it make sense for you to be in this high stress job, or what would a better fit be? And you being able to take time away. And I think along the way, and please share any other thoughts you have here, but I think along the way, it did for us become more so of a, less of a, how do we make the most? Because that's never been the goal.
No.
It's much more of the, how can we make the choices and operate the way God's designed us? How can we actually live in a way where it's not just us, but we're raising up, we call it other pillars in our community. How can we just contribute? And I think there are some that once they start learning these skills, they go down the powertrain and I want to control everything. And I think there can be a danger to that, which is why sometimes the very wealthy can get the bad rap, because there are some who abuse that. But I truly think along the way, as long as you can stay tight with those who, yes, they have the skills, yes, they have the finances, but they also have the character, they also have the humility, that there's just so much good that good people can do with resources. There's so much there that I could say, but
and you just touched on resources, and you mentioned the book about poverty that you read, and some of what you shared with me, I was astounded. But one of the things you mentioned that I had never thought of is that poverty isn't just a lack of finances. Poverty is a lack of resources.
Correct.
And what she, it's like what, mentally, or what were some of the things you talked about?
I mean, there are 8 different areas that she walks through. And again, phenomenal resource for anyone who wants to dig into that book directly, a framework for understanding poverty. But it's a lack of resources that is financial, but it is also mental. It's also emotional resources. How do you internally resolve all of that? It's role model resources. It's your support group. It's your spiritual resources, and a couple others I'll let you dig into and find. But yeah, it truly is all of life. And what you are, some people grow up very rich in one area, but very poor in other areas. And that was definitely true for me. Yeah,
100%. And on the resources part, we decided to create this. I mean, this is a resource. We wanted to create not only physical resources, and if you do want to grab some of those, by the way, they're in our description box. They're on our website. They're free to download. But, this channel, we built it because we wish that there were topics talked about like this, like communication, like how to choose a mentor effectively, how to, what are different business options out there to start. We wish we would have had someone, how to handle money. We just wish we would have had someone had these conversations with us. That's why we started this channel. There are plenty of resources that you can find like that on our website. One is called the Freedom Budget Tracker. Would highly recommend that you download that. It's just basics on how to actually budget, and it walks you through it, things that we had to learn the hard way. Another one is the Income Streams Index. This does a really great overview of just the different types of income streams that are out there, what it would take, maybe investment wise to start it, what it might look like for an ROI. There's always no guarantee. But at the end of the day with it, like you being able to have those resources so that every area of your life would be completely taken care of. That was our goal at the end of the day. And I always like to
who's
say,
supported. Yeah. Every
be
other
supported.
area of your life, you have the choice again. You have awareness for where you're at, and you can start to upgrade, and you can use those for your good and good of those around you.
yeah, and we're also not gurus. We
Yep.
are definitely not the SMEs, as they call them, the subject matter experts. We just like to
Oh,
say, yeah.
SME.
You haven't heard SME?
I might have back in the day.
We've said SME before, but we're just on the journey.
Yeah,
We've learned a lot.
this is us in real time.
Yep.
Sharing what we've learned. And I do think I've heard enough people who are very successful say that they wish they started sharing the resources along the way, sharing the journey along the way. And I will tell you, it has been so powerful to me, not when the gurus share and sell their courses, but when a peer of mine, who's maybe a couple steps ahead of me, is willing to take time. And we want this to not just be us. So we're excited to have others of our peers on here, interviewing them, learning from them. And again, just create an open conversation. And I truly think this will be years of content to come, years of resources to come. And we're so excited for it. We do, if anything, we love hearing back from those who are still on this journey, what resources you're looking for. Yeah. And there is a section where you can enter ideas of, hey, how do I handle this? And we're able to take that, run with it, toss it around our reference groups and see what we can come up with there. So please send that feedback in when you have it.
Yeah, and that is on the resource page of our website, the same one that's in the description box too. So.
Yes. Such a pleasure to share some of our story here with you guys today. We're excited to keep doing more of this. Any last thoughts from your end?
No, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for being with us here today. And we always say it, but just remember, you have the choice to change your current situation and to change your life. And we're excited to be sharing with you along the way. So we'll see you next time.
See you guys.